You want to make some picks on your favorite sports? Check out Underdog's Fantasy Pick'em game, where you can pick higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players and can win up to 325 times your entry by using code Niners when you sign up. And you'll get $1,000 bonus cash and a free pick.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is going to be a good one. We're going to be talking about free agent defensive linemen the 49ers could potentially address their lack of talent with and add players to this roster. Because right now, when you look at the 49ers cabinet at defensive tackle, a little bit bare. And we talked about this extensively. We've been going process through process to establish exactly how the 49ers were going to proceed with preseason. And as we were going through position by position, we were figuring out which positions were going to need the most attention. We felt like defensive line is the position that needs the most attention. The 49ers are cutting Javon Hargrave, who is going to be a free agent, and that's going to be a post-June 1 cut, but he is free to negotiate with teams when the new league year starts. He's likely to be moving on. And however you feel about Javon Hargrave, whether you wanted him on the team or not, you have to admit that when the 49ers signed him, everyone was looking for that production, and his 7.5 sacks in the first season that he was here in 2023 was the best that we got from the interior defensive line in a long time. So you do have to move on from that production. You never really overcame losing the production of Hargrave last year, who got hurt, or Eric Armstead, who moved on to Jacksonville. So the defensive line position is a little bit interesting. Now, you do know you have Malik Collins, which means you have one starter ready to roll. And that's a big one. The 49ers traded a 7th-round pick to the Houston Texans for Malik Collins. It was a great move for them because they got a player that could stabilize the spot next to Javon Hargrave. Hargrave gone, Armstead gone, and it means that you're going to have some needs on the interior defensive line. Now, we know the 49ers are probably going to address this in the draft, whether they sign free agents or not. But they need to make sure they do sign free agents, because when you look at their roster, they're in need of defensive tackle help in a big way. You got Malik Collins. You got Jordan Elliott, who started most of the season last year because of injury. And, of course, he had been a starting defensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns, so it's not like he hasn't been capable of doing it, but we saw some inconsistencies from him, that's for sure. You're definitely not going to get the sack production you were going to get from a Hargrave or an Armstead. Malik Collins equaled his career high with 5 sacks, which is pretty good from the interior defensive line. Most of the guys we're going to talk about are usually around that number, so it's a very good number that Malik Collins put up. But then you look behind and you had Clea Davis, who started the season with an injury. He got hurt during preseason. It felt like by the time he got his legs underneath him towards the end of the year, he was still only getting 15 to 20 snaps and just a pure rotational piece. You talk about Evan Anderson. He did a pretty good job in his rookie season, but it's a guy who didn't make the 49ers' initial 53-man roster, but yet they counted on him extensively later on in the season. Is he going to potentially get better and be a bigger part of the rotation? Yes. But is he a starter? No. Evan Anderson's not a starter. And the truth is, Evan Anderson's not a legit pass rusher either. He's more of a guy that's better against the run. So, with that being said, the 49ers have a need, and they have a real need when it comes to the number one defensive tackle on this football team. And it's going to be interesting to try to find that guy, because there's just not a lot of blue chip defensive tackles available on the open market that the 49ers could potentially go after. So this is going to be a fun episode. I hope you guys will all enjoy it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC. Bet Online is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, Bet Online has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. And of course, if you saw the beginning of the show, if you are interested in doing fantasy, Underdog Fantasy's higher lower game is phenomenal. I did it over the weekend. I had a lot of fun. I did not win, but I did have a lot of fun. I did have Saquon getting big yardage, so I did go higher on that one. If you'd like to join, check out the description section. Click on the link. Use the promo code NINERS, NINERS, and you can join in as well. I'm going to make picks this week. Later on in the week, I'll put them out there if you want to play along with me. But we've got to talk about positional needs that the 49ers had, and we knew defensive tackle was number one on our list. So finding somebody that could step in and play is significant. Now, for some teams, it's just about depth. Finding a depth piece that could fill the defensive tackle spot next to Malik Collins is not what the 49ers can do. They can't have a depth piece. They have that already. Jordan Elliott, Clea Davis, Evan Anderson, they're all really solid depth pieces. But out goes a couple of players that you've counted on over the years, probably. And I say probably because the 49ers could decide to bring back Kevin Givens, but more than likely Kevin Givens is going to be gone. Javon Hargrave, he's been here for 2 years. He's likely gone. So you do have a influx of defensive tackle talent that you're going to need. Now, you did trade during the season for Khalil Davis, but I don't think he really worked out. The 49ers made him inactive for a lot of the games that he was in San Francisco. And I think Khalil Davis, it was a trial. They wanted to see what a really good athlete could do in their system. And I just don't think he held up. There wasn't enough bang for their buck. There wasn't enough penetration into the backfield, causing a lot of problems because he's just not that good against the run. So that's another thing the 49ers are looking for, is potentially get better against the run, but it just hasn't been great. So what do? Well, first thing you got to do is scour and find guys that are fit. So the pro scouts have been going through this, figuring out which guys are fits for the 49ers defensive scheme, and they are going to put a list together for the coaches to go over so that way the coaches can evaluate. Now, you're also going to get the collegiate scouts who have had all the information on these guys since they came out of college. Some of the coaches have even evaluated since then. So when you hear names, you're going to feel somewhat like you know them already if you pay attention to the draft process every year, or if you just are a consistent watcher of football, you've probably seen these guys. Now, going through the nuance of finding who fits your scheme is important. Now, one of the first things I noticed was there wasn't a lot of guys that I felt that you could sign as the 49ers that were going to be guys who could step in and start day one next to Malik Collins. This is not that year. So if the 49ers are looking for a big-time defensive tackle, they might have to go the draft route and hope one of those young rookies can step up in year one, which isn't the norm, or they're going to have to make a trade. And that's even more complicated, figuring out all the money and everything that goes along with it. And money is a real problem, too, when you're trying to build a defensive front and you don't have a ton of money to spend. And yeah, the 49ers rolled over a lot of cap space. That is wonderful. That's what you have to do to make sure you're always under the cap and doing what you should do, being able to re-sign your players. Here's the issue. You still don't have that much money to spend because you got a lot of guys you want to bring back. You want to sign a high-priced defensive tackle or defensive end, you might lose Dre Greenlaw. You might lose Talanoa Hufanga. You might not be able to bring someone in at another position that you really like. You might lose Jordan Mason. These are the types of decisions the 49ers have to make. But they do have to allocate funds to the position. They do have to spend in free agency when it comes to defensive tackle. They do have to spend draft capital when it comes to the draft at defensive tackle. Like I said, the cabinet is bare. So let's get into this a little bit. The first name is a familiar name, and I think everyone is thinking the same thing, DJ Jones. And there could be an argument that DJ Jones hasn't been as good in Denver as he was in San Francisco, and I think that's a solid argument. Part of the reason he's more than likely going to be available on the open market and at least in a price range the 49ers can afford. Now, with DJ Jones, you're not getting DJ Jones and bringing him in to be a pass rush specialist. He's not coming in. He's not going to get the 7.5 sacks you got from Javon Hargrave. He's not going to ever be a double-digit sack guy. You're getting a guy that's good against the run, that can get penetration, get a quarterback off his spot with penetration up the middle and the occasional sack. This is a 2 to 3, maybe a 4 sack guy. So that's what you got to remember with DJ Jones. He'll help you when it comes to the run. He will probably help Malik Collins a lot because he'll be able to eat double teams, but don't expect huge sack numbers coming from DJ Jones. That's not really his game. His game is making sure you don't get smoked up the middle and moved off the spot because of the power, the low center of gravity, the quick first step, all those things. Now, he made $10 million in Denver. I do not expect him to get another double-digit type deal on the open market. His play hasn't been good enough to illustrate that he could stay there or even get more money. So I look for his market to go down a little bit, which means he's available for the 49ers. Does he wish to come back? That's another question. But that's something the 49ers are probably going to try to find out because this is a plug-and-play fit. You want to know if somebody's going to fit your scheme? Well, there's no guessing when it comes to DJ Jones. You know he fits. You know what you're going to get out of him. Not just that, is he stayed really healthy this season. He played in all 17 games. He started 16 of those games. DJ Jones did a really good job this season for the Denver Broncos, and their defense was really good. And so getting him to come back could be a huge advantage for the 49ers in an area in which they could go. I think it's the most obvious. Like I've said, you're not going to get a lot of sack numbers. So if you're looking for a defensive tackle that's going to get penetration, that's going to be able to put up, 5 to 10 sacks on the interior, DJ Jones is not that guy. Now, Malik Collins is. Malik Collins has back-to-back seasons now, one in Houston and one in San Francisco, same scheme, with 5 sacks in a season. So that's what you think you're going to get from him. I don't know if that is his ceiling. I kind of thought when he got to 5 sacks, maybe over the last couple games, he would push his career high up to 6 or 7. That didn't happen. So if that's a tandem that you like, I think that's an interesting move. I think that DJ Jones should be on the top of the 49ers list because of the things that he can do. Now let's talk about somebody that hasn't been within the 49ers scheme, and that's BJ Hill. But BJ Hill is a guy that's a winner in anyone's scheme. You're talking about a guy that stops the run really, really well. If you want a run stopper, you want somebody that can make it so the linebackers are protected and they're free to roam. BJ Hill is the way to go. The dude's an absolute monster. Everyone's been a huge fan of him for years, and we've been a huge fan of him on this channel because he is a guy that just does everything you need on the interior defensive line. Stops the run. He's got the ability to get upfield and get into the backfield and wreak havoc. He would definitely eat double teams. That would free up your linebackers. That would free up Malik Collins. He could make things a lot easier on Nick Bosa, but it's going to be a little bit more pricey. You're going to have to spend a little bit more money than you would DJ Jones. So do you want to do that? But you're looking at players that are in the same mold as far as run stop first, pass rush second. But these guys are, movers. They're gravity movers. They make it look like that offensive lineman is stuck in gravity and getting pulled to that quarterback because they are just driving those guys straight back. So I like these two guys for a fit on the interior part of the 49ers defensive line because of the type of players that they are. Good run stoppers who can also rush the passer. They're not inept when it comes to rushing the passer. You don't want to get somebody in there that can't rush the passer at all. When that happens, that really hurts your team when you get into early pass sets. You have Evan Anderson, for instance, and I'm not trying to hate on the young guy. I think he's got a lot of potential, but I think everyone can agree that Evan Anderson hasn't displayed the pass rush skills or ability right now through year one. Maybe he develops it, and that would be ultimately huge for the 49ers. But when he's in there on first down and they pass, you're essentially rushing with 3 guys. He's occupying 1 blocker But for the most part, they don't have to worry about him getting in there and causing havoc on the quarterback. So if you go all run stopper with a big guy that plays the run, that's great for stopping the run. But early down success in the passing game gets a little bit easier because though there's a body on the field, they're not really going to make the play. So that's something to remember when you're talking about guys who need to be run stoppers. They got to at least have the ability to rush the passer. DJ Jones, BJ Hill, they have the ability to still rush the passer, which I really love. So those are two guys that we're interested in. We know DJ Jones is probably going to be number one on everyone's list, but BJ Hill should be up there as well. He's a fit for the 49ers. He's a fit for what they want to do, and he will eat up blockers. Next up is a familiar name because he plays in Seattle, and he's had a lot of success in Seattle, and that's Jarran Reed. And Jarran Reed has played a very significant role for the Seattle Seahawks, but you're talking about a guy that's gotten 7 sacks from a defensive line position. That's impressive. I talked about guys who are able to pass rush. Jarran Reed's able to do that, but he's also a big body that plays the run pretty well too. This is the type of guy that could get unleashed next to Malik Collins, and you upgrade your defensive line with a guy that can actually get penetration and pass rush. So a little bit of a different mold. I would say he's a better pass rusher than a run stopper. Then we talked about DJ Jones and BJ Hill. So it's a what are you looking for, right? You had Buckner, who was really good at rushing the passer, not as good against the run. Armstead better against the run, but he was still a very good pass rusher. That's what you're getting from Jarran Reed. Now, it's a different build than Buckner and Armstead, that's for sure. But you're talking about a guy with some good arm length who's got the ability to create separation, and he's still laterally quick enough to cause problems on the interior for guards. So I like Jarran Reed. I think the 49ers are very familiar with him, watching him game wreck and do the things that he does in Seattle. I'm sure Seattle doesn't want to lose him. But here's an option for the 49ers to take somebody from their division rival and plug and play them. And he's shown that he has upside when it comes to getting after the quarterback, and getting 7 sacks from the interior pass rush could be exactly what the 49ers need. I like Jarran Reed for the 49ers. And I think what's nice is we found 3 options already that I think you're talking about starters. And that's one of the hard parts about finding defensive line right now. We're not going to be talking about double-digit sack guys. That's not what you're getting from any of these defensive tackles. When you looked at when the 49ers got Javon Hargrave was an anomaly. The fact that he had just had a double-digit sack year and was out on the open market, those don't happen very often. If you look at last year, there was a couple of big-name guys. There's no big-name guys. There's no Christian Wilkes out there that the 49ers can pounce on. So it's going to have to be get a guy that you feel has a little bit more upside, a guy that you feel could do a little bit better in your system, and then you're also going to have to draft. It's going to be a complete process for the 49ers this year. But maybe, just maybe they do like they did last year. They attacked the defensive end position, Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, and thought, hey, between the two of them, with the money that we're going to give them, maybe that will result in some real results. And we know, of course, Gross-Matos got hurt early, never really recovered, went on IR for a second stint, then came back and was a lot better and ended up having some production. But if we could get those 2 guys healthy, maybe that's what you could do at defensive tackle, sign 2 guys. And what will that mean for the depth players on this team? Well, it means competition. Never hurt anyone. Now let's get to a couple of guys that are from the Dallas Cowboys, that these guys are undersized, so not great run stoppers, but they get after the quarterback. First up is Chauncey Goldson, who has just gotten consistently better and better each year in Dallas. More snaps has equaled more production. But I talk about undersized. You're talking about a guy that's 6'2", 280. That's what you're going to get out of him. So these guys are penetrators, get upfield, cause havoc in the backfield, better pass rushers than they are stopping the run. And everyone knows that the Dallas Cowboys have struggled to stop the run consistently over the last several years. But there is a position of need when it comes to getting after the quarterback. So if you, like I talked about, pairing guys together, let's say you did get DJ Jones and you have DJ Jones playing on first and second down. He can still generate a pass rush, but when you get to third down, you could potentially go with a Chauncey Goldson, when he's not in his normal rotation. So you can kind of get some extra snaps for him. You have him a part of his normal rotation. but you also have this guy get in there and get after the quarterback. Now, it could be looked at as redundancy because Malik Collins rushes the quarterback pretty good. I would argue Goldson's better. But you also have Yetur Gross-Matos, who you want to play on the inside. That's part of the reason that you evaluate this. So do you want the interior pass rush? Is it that important? Can you give up some in the run? Most fans would say no. Let's go ahead and protect our linebackers, Fred Warner, maybe Dre Greenlaw, and be able to get after it. But it's a guy in Chauncey Goldson who can do that. The other one is Osa Odighizuwa. And I know I'm getting his name close. I can't say I'm getting it. I was practicing it before the show. Odighizuwa, though, is a very good play. Osa is a built almost like Chauncey Goldson. Those guys get after the quarterback, and they generate sacks. For Osa, it's 5 sacks. For Chauncey, it was 6 sacks. These guys get after the quarterback. So when you're looking for possible get-home potential, it's these guys. So different build, different makeup to how they go after rushing the passer or how they go after playing defensive line. So you would have a difference between what you're getting from DJ Jones and BJ Hill to what you're getting from these two guys. And then there's Jaron Reed that's kind of the mixture of both. And so that's why I kind of split them up. You have the run stoppers at the beginning. Then you have Jaron Reed that can kind of do both, which could mean he's the target, right? And then you have the two guys who are extreme pass rush. I kind of like the 49ers, going after different guys. But I'm going to tell you who I think the top targets are here in a second. As I go through this list, I wanted to build for the guys who are available and then talk about who's the top guys on the list for the 49ers. So Osa and Chauncey are two guys as well that can rush. Now we're going to get in some guys that I think are real targets that are fits. Especially one guy that could be coming on as a potential star in this league. And if he gets the opportunity for more snaps, could be even better. And that's Milton Williams of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's still playing. He's still playing right now, and that defensive line has been really good. He has 4.5 sacks this season. He has been getting after it, and I think there's more potential with a little bit more freedom within the defensive front. He might be able to even do more. So I think that he's a real target. He plays the run well. He plays the pass well. This is another guy like Jaron Reed that I believe can do both. But I think with Williams, he's so much younger. He's only 24 years old. He's still in his first contract. He's going to want to get a big contract. I think the 49ers could still get him at an affordable rate. But if you could plug and play this guy next to Malik Collins, then as you draft somebody and Malik Collins moves on in a year or so, then all of a sudden that new player that you drafted steps in. You got him and Williams for a while, and you feel like your interior defensive line is built, and you just keep stockpiling talent behind them. So this is one that I really like. I think this is a real option for the 49ers is Milton Williams stepping in and potentially getting that spot. The quickness, the lower half, the way he's able to stop the run. To me, this dude is a legit player, and I think he's only going to get better and better. And you know what? He's played with some really good players when he was with Philadelphia, he's still with Philadelphia, but we'll see. I'm sure they're going to try to keep him around, but I think the 49ers would be interested in potentially grabbing him. Poona Ford, and I've brought up Poona Ford on a couple episodes already. Poona Ford is another former Seattle Seahawk. This year he was playing with the Los Angeles Chargers. He had a really good season, 3 sacks, but what Poona Ford does, tackles for loss in the run game, holding up against the run. He's a big physical presence and somebody the 49ers could be interested in. And if you want to reshape the interior part of your defensive line with someone that's going to stop the run, Poona Ford is that guy. And the way I talked about DJ Jones is how I feel about Poona Ford. And the 49ers might be willing to lose a little bit of sack production on the interior if they could get some early down run stops. The cool thing about Ford and DJ Jones, and I'll kind of keep it to Ford on this one, but the cool thing about him is he still is a force that you have to worry about when it comes to pass rush. That's the main thing. They have to worry about your pass rush abilities. And I think Poona Ford is that guy. I thought he had a really great season with the Chargers, a really great defense there in Los Angeles. They were coached up. The technique was on point. Poona Ford would be a tremendous signing for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think it would kind of satisfy what they're looking for. A guy that can stop the run, that's got really good penetration skills and upside when it comes to pass rush. And he's been in the league for a while, so saying upside is something different, but in the right makeup of a roster, Puna 4 could have a really big season. And I think that he's somebody that the 49ers could definitely be interested in. Now, let's talk about somebody that's kind of been flying under the radar, but has had a great season for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's Tershawn Wharton, another undersized. Is he a defensive end? Is he a defensive tackle? He goes about 6'3", 280 pounds. A tremendous athlete. We talked about Khalil Davis earlier, the tremendous athlete the 49ers tried to trade for, see what he could be. Well, Wharton is one of those guys as well who gets better and better with the more snaps he plays. A real penetrator, aggressive. I think he's an under-the-radar guy the 49ers could be interested in if they miss out on a couple of guys potentially. Maybe you target a Wharton because I think his salary cap number is not going to be big. You could potentially bring him in, and once you get your hands on him, how could you mold that athlete? But he's been coached up pretty well in Kansas City, and I think the 49ers would be really excited to get him in there. Now, a couple of names before I go ahead and rank my top 5 of these available names that I feel fit the system. These are some guys that are going to be cheap options that I think the 49ers could grab to compete with some of their depth pieces. Number 1 is Greg Gaines. So Greg Gaines was with the Los Angeles Rams for a couple of years, won a Super Bowl in 2021. Then he moved on to Tampa Bay, and he was with Tampa Bay this year. His numbers aren't ever really great, right? He's 1 or 2 sacks, but he's a penetrator. He's undersized, 6'1", 312. Not a big dude by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a penetrator. He moves quickly, good lateral quickness, a good rotational piece. Could be somebody the 49ers are potentially interested in, especially if Kevin Givens decides to move on. Then you have another guy, a veteran that you could bring in to compete with Kalia Davis and with Evan Anderson as potential backup defensive tackle because he has the ability to play both positions. So Greg Gaines could be somebody the 49ers are interested in. And then Armon Watts. He had 3 very productive seasons with the Minnesota Vikings, even getting up to 5 sacks his last season there with Zimmer. Once Zimmer left, then Watts left as well. And once Watts left, it just hasn't been as good. He's played for a couple of teams this last year with the New York Giants. I don't think he's really found his scheme again, but he's got a really good first step, pretty good penetration, and a really good skill set. And I think he would be a solid option once again to compete when it comes to depth. So finding guys who can move, guys who can penetrate is one of the keys to finding guys who fit within the 49ers system. Also the athletic ability to bend, but being able to hold up when they're going to get double teamed in duo blocks is something that's significant. And I think Greg Gaines and Armon Watts, because of what I've seen on film, they can do that. I think sometimes Gaines will give up a little bit more ground than you want, but he's still got the potential. So let's go ahead and rank them as far as, top 5 defensive tackles. I think the 49ers should go after them, or how I think they will. I do believe that DJ Jones will be number 1 on their list because it's a known commodity. If you know what you're going to get, then you don't have any guesswork. He stayed primarily healthy. He looked the part again. DJ Jones is number 1 on that list. Number 2, I'm going to put Jaron Reed number 2. I would normally put BJ Hill number 2, but I think BJ Hill is going to command a pretty good salary out there on the open market. And I just think that Jaron Reed, with the ability he has to get upfield and penetrate and put pressure on the quarterback, I think the 49ers are going to covet that ability to get sacks from the interior. If you could get Malik Collins to get 5 again next year, and Jaron Reed could get 7, 8 sacks, and you could total, over 13 sacks from those 2 players to go with a rotation of guys you bring in, probably a rookie, I think you're feeling pretty good about the interior part of your defensive line, generating pressure and generating a moved pocket so your outside guys can make plays. So I think he would be number 2. I think number 3 is Milton Williams. And I think Milton Williams, part of the main reason that I put him at 3 is I think he's probably going to get some pretty good offers out in the open market. A young player that can penetrate and do it all. I think Philadelphia Eagles are going to try to lock him up and bring him back. We'll see, though. They've been willing to let players go before, but I love how young he is and his ability. I think Milton Williams could be a very big player for the San Francisco 49ers. Number 4, Poona Ford. I think just seeing what he did with the Chargers this season, being so good against the run, it's an easy option if you miss out on DJ Jones or you feel like DJ Jones, you have some concerns. Poona Ford is the next best option. 3 sacks on the season. He's able to stop the run. He's a good mover. He can play against zone. He can take on double teams. I think Poona Ford is a really good option. And then number 5, I'm going to go ahead and go with BJ Hill. And I did not go with any of the elite pass rushers. The 2 Cowboys, I didn't really go with them. I stayed away from the undersized players in this one with more big physical guys who have the ability to stop the run, but also are able to get home. I didn't want guys that were going to get moved off their spot consistently. I do think the Cowboys guys are pretty good. And if they came in, hey, as long as they could slow up the run, I'd be pretty excited about it. But you kind of stick with those guys. And I think you could probably flip a couple of guys. Like, I think easily you could have put Milton Williams ahead of Jaron Reed. But I had my own thought process on how the 49ers would think about those players. I think they would love to get the young guy. But sometimes that second contract's a little bit more expensive than Jaron Reed, who's going into contract 3-4. So you could probably get a little bit of a bargain basement. So it's what can I get and what price can I get it at, I think is one of the keys in this game. So we talked about defensive tackles in this one. That was the number 1 priority for the San Francisco 49ers. And of course, there's going to be plenty of options in the draft as well. 49ers picking 11, and everyone is talking about Mason Graham. And if Mason Graham is available at 11, or they could trade up slightly to pick him up, that's just something you have to do. And really what they do in free agency doesn't stop them from getting Mason Graham at all. If you told me the 49ers are going into next year and they've got Malik Collins, DJ Jones, Mason Graham, and Jordan Elliott at defensive tackle, part of the rotation, with, Kalia Davis or Evan Anderson being defensive tackle 5, I would say we just had a massive improvement. And halfway through the year, I'm expecting Mason Graham to start taking significant snaps the way that Braden Fisk did with the Los Angeles Rams. So I think that's a potential for the 49ers. So you still are going to address it in free agency. You're still going to address it in the draft. Either way, and they want to get the best possible players you can get. Let me know who you think the 49ers top 5 defensive tackles or even the defensive tackle they should go for. And if you don't agree with my list, let me know. I'm curious. If you have players I didn't mention, bring those up too. I'm always curious if there's guys that I missed. I tried to evaluate it, but I'm one guy. There's no way I can go through everything. So I really appreciate everyone coming through and checking it out. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.